Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. The Hunter nerfs have really changed the meta, and we currently have one of the most balanced metagames we have ever had in Hearthstone. So in this video I'm going to take a look at what is good right now with the top 14 best decks. I have to say that interpreting the data right now is a little bit challenging. There were several issues that I spotted where I really started to dig into the data. For example, the performance of Unholy Death Knight. When you look at the archetype performance in HS Replay, it doesn't look that great, but the most popular deck, which is around 1/3 of the games, is doing far better than other decks that HS Replay categorizes as Unholy Death Knights, even though it doesn't show you the list, so I don't know what they're categorizing as Unholy Death Knights. Another thing is Drum Druid, Treant Druid. The distinction keeps blurring, and it's a mess trying to figure out like what is the real performance of Druid in which matchup, because there's some changes like Topior or no Topior, going with the ramp package, not going with the ramp package, that clearly affect matchup performance, and it's not really showcased in archetype statistics. Anyway, I have done the best I can to look through the archetype statistics and then go through individual decks to really showcase what is the true power of decks when you play the best decks. And coming in at number 14 we have Nature Shaman. Yeah, rumors of Nature Shaman's death may have been a little bit exaggerated anyway, because Nature Shaman, now with the new Jazz-based lists, is strong against decks like Warlocks, Warriors and Druids. And lo and behold, there are a lot of Warlocks, Warriors and Druids in the meta. On the other hand, Nature Shaman has lots of weaknesses, and some of these weak matchups are below 20% win rate. Like 40-60 is already bad in Hearthstone. 15-85, that's a disaster. So Nature Shaman is super polarized, but when you hit the right meta, it's possible to win with Nature Shaman right now. Coming in at number 13 is Thaddius Warlock. Thaddius nerf, some call it Thaddius buff nowadays, although for this specific list I guess it is a nerf. Thaddius nerf hasn't affected the deck too much. It still has some good matchups, especially the matchup against Control Warrior, which is super popular right now, which is keeping Thaddius Warlock afloat. When you look at archetype statistics on HS Replay, it shows that Thaddius Warlock would be like super good, but that's more like all Thaddius Warlock lists seem to be performing quite the same. There's not a lot of difference between changing a couple of cards here, changing a couple of cards there, whereas with many other archetypes there are good lists and then there are bad lists, and the archetype overall statistic is some kind of compromise between those two. But with Thaddius Warlock, because there's only like the good lists, then that gives the archetype a little bit of inflated performance figures. However, Thaddius Warlock is a fine deck, and you can totally play it on the ladder if you like. At number 12 we have Relic Demon Hunter. There are currently two playable Demon Hunter archetypes, Outcast Demon Hunter, Relic Demon Hunter. Relic Demon Hunter is the weaker of the two, but it is still a viable archetype that has some decent matchups in the current meta. Number 11 is Undead Priest. Undead Priest has not changed by a single card. I mean, Undead Priest hasn't changed for quite some time now. After they added Amantul to the list, and Amantul is still bonkers, then Undead Priest has just been steadily performing. It's not the greatest deck of all time, but it just keeps having decent performance throughout the ladder. Outcast Demon Hunter is the 10th best deck on the ladder. It has kind of Nature Shaman vibes in the sense that it has the opposite matchup spread. So it's weak against stuff like Control Warlock, Curse Warlock, Control Warrior, and then it's stronger against some of the faster decks. However, Outcast Demon Hunter is not as weak against these control decks, so it's still playable even if you meet a bunch of them, but of course that does detract from its performance. If it was only against very aggressive decks, faster decks, then Outcast Demon Hunter might be the best deck in the game, but those control decks keep it at bay. There are also no changes to Pure Paladin this week, Pure Paladin coming in at number 9. This list with the Muster for Battle, with Buffeted Beguns, with Jukebox Totems, Pure Paladin with those dude synergies is the best way to build Pure Paladin right now, and enables Amitus also to shine in this archetype. And the archetype keeps performing quite decently, although the more aggressive variant that ditches the pure ideology is the superior Paladin deck. Number 8 is Curse Warlock. Yeah, Curse Warlock is a fun archetype. Curse Warlock just keeps being part of the meta always. It's really weird. It doesn't seem to ever perform like a tier 1 level, but it does punish some of the slower decks, like Control Warlock for example. And now that Control Warlock has become more popular, then Curse Warlock is performing better than it has been performing for quite some time actually, and coming in at number 8 despite its weaknesses against many of the faster decks. Except for Outcast Demon Hunter, because Curse Warlock's removal, the removal they have with Defiles, with Mortal Eradications, is perfectly tuned to beat what Outcast Demon Hunter can get on the board. This week I have placed Unholy Death Knight at number 7. When you look at pure archetype statistics, it shows that Unholy Death Knight should be far weaker, but when you look at the statistics of this specific deck, which comprises 1/3 of all Unholy Death Knight games that are played, the performance is just much stronger. So it's kind of hard to position this adequately, but this seems to be pretty much the realistic expectation of Unholy Death Knight performance as long as you play the good list. Mech Rogue has remained exactly the same as last week. This Scourge Illusionist Mothership build is the superior way to build Mech Rogue. I'm still waiting for some kind of innovation. There have been some attempts, but nah, they have failed again. Scourge Illusionist Mothership it is. Mech Rogue's position is a little bit lower now because there's lots of Control Warriors, and Control Warrior has established itself as a good deck against Mech Rogue as well. And coming in at number 5 is the old meta tyrant Arcane Hunter. It is no longer the best deck in the game. It's definitely still in competition for that slot though, because actually there's like 6-7 of these best decks are pretty close to each other, and Arcane Hunter is still a very strong deck. The other Hunter archetype that was nerfed, Hound Hunter is basically now like a 51% win rate deck. So while it might be possible to also climb with Hound Hunter, I cannot recommend that anymore. However, Arcane Hunter is still going strong despite Haldron now costing 4 mana. Number 4 we have Drum Druid, or Treant Druid, whatever you really want to call this. I'm not even sure. This list seems to be the best performing one, so this is kind of now a hybrid between what Treant Druid used to be and what Drum Druid used to be, because this deck incorporates cards like Plot of Sin and Lingering Zombie from what Treant Druid used to do, but it also includes cards like Widowblood Seedsman. That was kind of Drum Druid's speciality, so how do you even categorize these decks anymore? This one shows up as Drum Druid on Aegis Replay, then again cards that like Widowblood Seedsman but are pretty much otherwise the same come up as Treant Druids, and then yeah, I don't even know. If you were to add Topiary to this list and cut some of the early game, then you would have a more traditional Drum Druid, which would improve your matchup against Control Warrior, but it would weaken some of your other matchups. So I'm not sure, maybe there's still a way to fit in Topiary into this list and not cut much else, like cut one card, add Topiary. Would that be enough to improve Control Warrior matchup without compromising the others? There might still be some more work to be done with Drum and Treant Druid, but this sort of convergence has been happening, and two decks are now merging into one, and that one seems to be the one that's played on the ladder. At number 3 we have Token Paladin. Aegis Replay calls it Aggro Paladin. This is still Bulling's list, no changes have been made, no improvements have been found so far. The list is just really good. But what's exciting is the top 2, because at number 2 we have Control Warlock. Yes, Control Warlock was not even a thing before the Hunter nerfs, but now with the Hunters nerfed, Control Warlock has more room, more time to shine, and people have been playing this kinds of list with Ignis and Symphony and Sargeras, even ditching Loken and adding cards like Doomkin. I didn't expect Doomkin to actually see competitive play, and Doomkin is like a bottom 3rd card in performance, but that means that it's not the last. So yeah, you can play Control Warlock, you can play with Doomkin, you can ditch Loken, you can add Gigafin. Prison of Yogg-Saron seems to be quite bad in this archetype actually, because every deck of this archetype that has Prison of Yogg-Saron is the weakest performing card, so that could probably be replaced with something else. But giving up on that Loken, adding more early game minions, still relying on Sargeras, trying to Symphony to get cheap Sargeras, still using Darkened Ratir, it's wonderful, and it's actually quite strong on the ladder right now. But the best deck in the game right now is Control Warrior. There are lots of Control Warrior lists around, and some of those are better than others, and I think this is clearly the strongest Control Warrior list at the moment. It has ditched the Titan, no more Kaskarot, It's a 30 card list, so no Renatal package, it runs the Riff package, and it also runs Steam Guardian for some tutoring. Steam Guardian I thought would not see play in the Saga type. It is one of the weaker performing cards in the list, but it does seem to be just good enough to run after all, when you find just the right 30 card list. And Control Warrior, the most popular deck on the ladder, many different lists, but this one seems to be the best one. So if you want to climb the ladder, well, practically the 6-7 best decks here are all really strong, but my number one recommendation would be Control Warrior. Thank you for watching. Click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and a special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters, YouTube members and Twitch subscribers who make all of these videos possible.